So in this video, I'm going to talk about emotion. This is one of the takeaways that you're going to get from this program and from our work together is a completely new appreciation for emotion, an understanding of what it is, the role of it in our lives, and the ability to do it a lot better. And I can tell you that this is very important. I can tell you that 5 years ago, 30 years ago, I wouldn't have seen the point. I was an engineer. I prided myself on my rational, logical mind, was not very much in tune with my emotions, and they didn't seem important. Well, I was wrong, as I was about so many things in my youth, and having come to this new, different understanding of emotion has paved the way for a lot of great changes in my life with respect to my drinking, with respect to my effectiveness in my work, my relationships, and everything. Another reason that emotion is important is because it's the answer to a common question that I get from people talking about drinking. They say, why can't I just stop? Why do I keep doing this? Why? And the answer to that why is emotion. So I'm going to be explaining that here in this video. First reason emotion is important, and this is kind of at a macro level of our behavior, is that everything we do, everything we want, everything we're striving for, a car, a house, money, a fancy watch, it's all because of how we think it will make us feel. So we've got a few basic drives as humans. We want to feel safe, both in our person. We want to know that in the next few minutes we're not at risk of getting hit or eaten. And we want to know that our stuff is safe. So at the most basic primitive level, for most of human history, stuff meant shelter and food. And if we could feel that that was not at risk, we're going to feel better. And I think now we've extrapolated stuff to encompass the bigger picture of all of the stuff that we own. The other thing that is very important to us is connection with other people. For most of human history, it was very important that we be in tight with the tribe. The tribe was the source of protection, the source of cooperation that enabled us to have food and shelter and all those things. And to be a human alone was a precarious situation, pretty much probably led to death. And so many of the things we do, so many of the emotions that we experience are related to this drive for connection. I can quickly talk about some of the social emotions. On the negative side are guilt, shame, embarrassment. Those are all related to our feeling that we have maybe done something wrong to a member of the tribe and they're going to find out and punish us for it or exile us. Embarrassment is they've seen us do something bad, and that could be bad as in harmful to somebody else. Or if you think about why are you embarrassed if you fall down? Well, you've demonstrated your incompetence to the tribe, and maybe they'll reject you because they can't count on you to be a useful partner. So these are really basic drivers, and you can see how they apply to so much of our behavior. We've got a couple other basic needs. One is to be free or to feel free. We want to have control over our agency, and when we don't feel in control, it's one of the worst feelings. Obviously, being in jail, being in prison is one example of that. Some of us feel trapped and not free, or have in a marriage maybe, in a work situation. And one of the comments I get from people talking about their drinking is they just want to be in control. They want to feel in control. They want to feel that they have agency over when they drink or not, and that it's not that the drink controls them. So this drive for freedom is very important, and you see it in our emotional life. And finally, I believe that we all want to we have a drive toward expansion, towards growth. My dog Curly doesn't seem to have that same drive. He's pretty content with having these other needs met. He doesn't actually have any stuff. But this drive to expand is important. And so when we look at our lives and we feel sometimes that the quality of our life is not where we want, I think it's because we're suffering in this area of growth and expansion. And I would say that fun represents expansion. Fun is a way to grow. One thinks about challenging games, for example. They kind of are a drive that's important in this category. So how does it, so basic stuff, but let's talk about like one thing that we kind of all want, would like to have more of, that's money. And we can talk about how this relates to these drives and these emotions. So money means different things to different people. For some people, money means security, a roof over their head, plenty to eat. And we can make a distinction here between being safe and secure and feeling safe and secure. For some people, having $5,000 in the bank would create a feeling of safety and security. For other people, it's having $100K. What happens maybe for many of the people that have $100K, like if I had 100, I would feel safe. Then they get to 100 and it becomes, well, if I had 500, I would feel safe. So our feeling of security that we want often has very little to do with our actual security. Money is a big way to get connection. Sometimes we want money for connection, and that shows up in terms of the desire to buy expensive things that we can show off, watches, fancy houses, cars. They indicate high status. And that's a statement of, hey, we're well connected in the group, respect me, take care of me. Money certainly represents freedom. I spent most of my corporate career planning early retirement. How much money could I save that would enable me to retire early and be free, to be out from under the clutches of the man and have freedom. So money totally represents freedom for many people. And then I think this is a little bit less direct, but money can facilitate expansion. If you've got money, you could do fun things. So these are sort of the high-level basic drives of humanity. And really, I think if you look at anything that you want or seeking in your life, you can map it to one of these drives. So that's the role of emotion at the macro level in our lives. Let's talk about at the micro level, and this is where it gets interesting and important. This is the minute-by-minute, day-to-day activity in our lives. So we want to talk about actions, the things we do, or the things we don't do. I mean, this is kind of what creates our life, right? The things we do or don't do creates the results in our life. We eat too much fatty food, the result is we get fat. We drink too much alcohol, the result is we get fat, or maybe our partners are irritated with this, or we don't do a very good job at work, or whatever. So actions matter. Well, we like to think that our actions are directed by our thoughts. So especially if you're a rational person, like you heard me describe myself, I think something, therefore I do it. Where does emotion come into this? Well, let's look at an example that illustrates the weakness of the linkage between these two things. And we can talk about exercise. So a lot of people want to exercise. They intend to exercise. They know that they should exercise. They have plans to exercise next month, or they're going to make a New Year's resolution to exercise. So they have various thoughts about exercise. And maybe one of them would be, I should exercise. So that's a pro-exercise thought, right? You would think that if our thoughts directed our actions, all the people going around thinking I should exercise would be exercising. Well, as you well know, it's not happening. You can think of people where this mismatch occurs. What's actually happening is they think I should exercise, but the action is no exercise is taking place. So what's going on here? Well, the missing link is our old buddy, emotion. So what happens when we think a thought like, I should exercise? Most should statements really have two parts to them. It's, I should exercise, but in parentheses, but I'm not, and therefore I suck. So maybe the emotion from that is guilt. Guilt is not a pleasant emotion. It's a heavy, it's not an energizing emotion. And an emotion like that is just not the fuel for action, especially an action that maybe is challenging, that's different, that's out of our comfort zone. We don't change our lives and do difficult things when we're animated by emotions like guilt. It's just how it works. And so anytime you find a mismatch or an alignment between what you want to do or think you should do and the action you should take, it's always a matter of an emotion that's being created. And usually it could be linked to the specific way you think about it. Sometimes we create an overall emotional environment for ourselves of kind of ongoing chronic irritation, regret, guilt, and so on that drives bad actions like acting like a jerk. But you could always tie things quite tightly together. So let me give you a couple other examples. So we're mostly here to talk about drinking. Let's talk about the action of drinking. So one thought that drives drinking is, I like it. Could be that I love the taste of it, I love the buzz, I love the social aspects. All those kind of thoughts are going to create desire. So when you've got desire for something and you've got it in front of you, you've got the potential to get it, you're going to do the thing. So that's too easy, right? But what if you're thinking, I need to quit, or I drink too much. So you're thinking these thoughts that would seem to direct the action of not drinking, but you're drinking too much. What's happening there? Again, it's our buddy emotion. And very likely it's going to be some version. It might be fear of the unknown, fear of what people will think. Guilt might come up again. So in this case, those emotions, they don't actually directly drive drinking, but they drive drinking in the sense that we don't like to feel that way. We know that drinking takes the edge off. It turns the volume down on negative emotion. So we drink in order to avoid or to cover that up. So this is a huge thing. Our actions, they're sort of inspired, they're sort of directed by our thoughts, but only when the way we think about a thing creates an emotion that's in alignment. And when there's a mismatch, that's when we do stuff that we don't want to do, or don't do stuff that we think we should do. So now I want to talk about what emotion is. Okay, maybe I've convinced you that it's important, that it's worth paying attention to. Let me give you an understanding of what it is and how to manage it differently, just a quick version of that. So we've got a person. This is you, let's say. You've got your happy smiling face with your brains up there and your body. We are constantly, in a very subconscious or an automatic way, not a conscious way, scanning our environment, looking for, what's going on, what's happening now with respect to these drives. Am I safe? Is my stuff safe? Is my connection safe? And what's likely to happen in the next few minutes? What do I need to do, or do I have to make preparations to take some action to maintain the safety of those things? And based on this part of our brain's prediction of what we need to do, it's sending signals to our body to get ready for some sort of action. So those signals might mean, if we take a very classic case of, wow, something really dangerous here, I might need to run or fight in a second, let me get the body fired up, then brain's going to send some signals to elevate the heart rate, increase our rate of breathing, maybe tense our muscles, change our blood flow so that there's less blood flow going from our digestive system and more going to our limbs so that we can take action. But this preparation of the body happens for all sorts of things. It's not only a matter of the fight or the flight system. And so we're kind of in flux all the time with all these inner things changing. Of course, we're not aware of them being changed. We're not telling our heart rate to speed up. And we're really not very conscious of the fact that that's happened. There's other parts of our brain, completely independently though, that are paying attention to their body. They're checking on it. And they are sort of noticing this activity and then making an interpretation. Oh man, in the past, when I felt like this, bad stuff happened or good stuff happened. And it's that, so we got the one part of the brain which is sort of sending signals to the body, and we've got another part of the brain which is paying attention to reading what's going on in the body, and it's trying to make sense of what's happening. And that's really where emotion comes in. It's our body, it's our brain checking in with our body. And again, I want to emphasize that this doesn't register as, oh, my heart rate is accelerated. It's more of a, I use the term vibrations. We experience vibrations in our body as a result of the kind of the constellation of all the physiology that's happening. Now, if you were redesigning this system from scratch, you may say, it seems like a roundabout way for this part of the brain to know what's happening, to know if things are good or bad. Why couldn't we have this part of the brain that's making this evaluation of what's going to happen next, talk to this part of the brain separately? Well, I don't know. It doesn't work that way. It seems to be a pretty good system. It's gotten us to where we are. So our experience of the world, are things okay, is not through this kind of direct evaluation. It's more through our experience of what our body thinks is going to happen via these vibrations as a result of this physiology. So how does this drive our actions? Well, these emotions, these vibrations, they're a signal. They're kind of an open loop that we want to resolve. You think about desire, for example. Desire is not really a comfortable state. We want to close the loop on that desire, fulfill it, and turn that into satisfaction, for example. And that's true of most emotions. Certainly the negative emotions, we want to solve them. We want to get rid of this vibration. We want to convert it to something new. So this is where so much of our behavior is driven by our emotions. We feel desire because we're thinking about how great a delicious IPA tastes, and we want to drink to close the loop on that. But it's true also for guilt. The signal there is something's wrong, you're experiencing guilt. Let me close that down somehow. Maybe one way to do it would be to apologize to somebody. If they were there in front of you, you could close the loop on that. And they'd smile at you and say it's okay, and your guilt would go away. But if we don't have the person in front of us, then this is, again, I talked about earlier, where drinking comes in. So our behavior is driven to close the loop on these open signals. The good news is we don't have to. It's not necessary to. As soon as you start relating to these vibrations in your body a little more directly by basically checking in and paying attention to your body, instead of sort of to the overall effect of the vibration, you can be very anxious, for example. You check in with your body and see what's happening. You find, this anxiousness, all this means is my breathing is kind of shallow, my heart rate's fast, and I got tension in my neck. I had an experience when I first started learning about this. Something made me quite angry. It was a work-related situation. It happened on the phone. So when I hung up with the person, I was going to go about my day. I wasn't going to go kick the dog or anything, but I was feeling pretty angry, and I remembered, let me let me feel this emotion. Let me try to experience what's going on in my body instead of like being controlled by this vibration of anger. So I checked in with myself and I noticed that what I really noticed, the most pronounced thing, was I had a feeling of weakness or emptiness in my biceps and my shoulders. I felt some tension in my back, and I also had a feeling of like a disc hovering behind my neck, and there was kind of like almost a tingly sensation with the skin at the back of my neck, but I had this sense of a disc. It was pretty powerful. I realized, man, I've been acting out, acting like a jerk, doing dumb things because of this vibration in my body, basically this sense of weakness in my arms, and I've noticed this since many, many times. This is true of the urge to drink, the craving. I feel like this is a big problem. I have to solve this. It's so intense. But when you can check in with it and notice that it means, or what's happening is you feel a little bit energized, that you maybe have some extra saliva in your mouth, maybe a sense of emptiness in your belly. You say, I've been letting this control my life. So this is finally where the rubber meets the road of managing our emotions. There's actually more to it, but this is really the basic part of it, is being able to know that even though our default tendency is to want to solve an emotion, we don't have to do it. Now finally, I have to talk a little bit more about where emotion comes from. So I said in the beginning that this part of our brain is looking around, trying to make an evaluation of what's going on. Are we safe? Are things going to be good or bad in the next few minutes? So it's doing that partly on the basis of our sensory organs. It's listening for things, it's looking for things. But that's really the least of it. It's, and especially in our modern lives, which are pretty uneventful, pretty predictable, there's really not a lot in any given moment. There's not much out there that's threatening. But what we are doing as modern people is thinking. There's constant thoughts going on. And a lot of them might be about the past and about what went wrong in the past, what you did wrong, what other people did wrong to you, how things should be different. Might be thoughts about the future, predictions of disaster, or maybe even thoughts of all the things you have to do to make things work out right. And this thinking is interpreted by this part of the brain that's making this evaluation just as strongly as our thoughts. And the thing is, this part of the brain that's doing this doesn't really have an understanding of time or space. So even if thoughts are about the past, it doesn't understand the past. It's experiencing this idea of badness having happened, and it's incorporating that into this current prediction of how are things now, what's going to happen in the next few minutes. You're thinking about the future. It doesn't understand the future. So your thoughts of distress and worry about the future are affecting this part of the brain's interpretation of how are you now. You read the news about some disaster halfway around the world. Same thing. Brain doesn't really understand space in that way. And so in the earlier example, when I talked about thoughts, feelings, and actions, and we did the example of exercise and our thoughts that create a feeling, this is really what's going on when I say our thoughts create our feelings. It's not the actual facts of our situation. Usually for most of us, they're pretty mundane. It's our thinking about it, our interpretation of it, that creates our feelings, which drives our actions. All right, so that's it for emotion.